7'4", 39-inch wingspan reach, a guard's handle, a sprinter's first step, and a shot-blocking radius that bends the geometry of an entire basketball court. Now picture that same body walking out of a modest apartment in Le Chesnay, a quiet town outside Paris with no NBA academy, no American AAU circuit, no five-star training facility waiting for him. Just a kid, a ball, and a body that did not seem to follow the same rules as everyone else's. When Kevin Durant, a man who has seen every kind of talent the sport has ever produced, watched this teenager move for the first time, he did not hesitate. He called him an alien, not a phrase tossed around for hype, a genuine, stunned admission from one of the greatest scorers in history that he was looking at something basketball had never produced before. That single reaction from Durant did more to shake the global basketball world than almost any highlight reel could because it came from someone who does not say things like that lightly. Now, stretch that contrast as far as it will go. Olympic finalists train inside facilities engineered by sports scientists, biomechanics labs, recovery pools, private chefs calculating macros down to the gram. World championship medalists have national federations pouring funding into their joints, their tendons, their sleep schedules. Victor Wembanyama had none of that early on. He had French regional academies that were not built for a body shaped like his. Most basketball development systems are designed around averages, around the normal curve of human height and limb length. A point guard's footwork drills do not translate cleanly to a frame growing past 7 feet while still a teenager. Coaches did not know what training program to hand him because nothing in their existing playbook accounted for someone that tall, moving with that much fluidity. The gap between what the system was prepared to develop and what his body was already doing was not small. It was a canyon. While Olympic-level athletes were fine-tuning the difference of a tenth of a second or a few centimeters on a vertical leap, Wembanyama was out here outright redefining what a 7-footer's body was even allowed to do on a basketball court. Switching onto smaller guards, stepping out beyond the three-point line, blocking shots from angles that defenders his size were never supposed to reach. Go back further and the rejection becomes painfully real. As a kid, his height made him stand out instantly, but standing out is not the same as being wanted. Many scouts looked at a lanky, awkward, still-growing body and saw a liability waiting to break down, not a future generational force. He grew so fast that his coordination had to constantly catch up to his own limbs, and in those early years that made him look clumsy, fragile, unfinished, exactly the kind of player elite programs tend to pass over in favor of someone more polished, more proven, more comfortable to bet on. There was no scholarship money waving him toward an American powerhouse high school, no financial backing smoothing the road. His family worked, supported him quietly, but the sport itself, the institutions that were supposed to identify the next great talent, did not see him as the obvious choice early on. He had to be patient inside a system that kept underestimating exactly the body it should have been begging to develop. And behind that patience was a grind nobody glamorizes in highlight reels. Long, repetitive hours in gyms that were not designed for someone his size, ceilings too low for some of his footwork drills, equipment that did not fit a body still stretching taller by the month. Early mornings before school, conditioning work meant to strengthen joints that were under constant strain just from carrying his own growing frame. There is a very real, physically exhausting cost to being a teenager whose skeleton is expanding faster than his muscles and tendons can stabilize around it. That meant extra recovery work, extra physiotherapy, extra caution just to avoid injury, layered on top of normal teenage life, school, family, the ordinary exhaustion every young athlete feels, but multiplied by a body that demanded more attention than most coaches had ever had to give. He trained through growing pains that were not metaphorical. They were literal, physical, painful interruptions to a body trying to keep up with its own rapid transformation while still being expected to perform like a finished product on the court. Then came Nanterre, then Asvel, then Metropolitans 92, each step building quiet buzz inside France. But the real system-shattering moment came on a much bigger stage. By the time NBA scouts, executives, and international media descended on French gyms specifically to watch one teenager play, the noise had become impossible to ignore. Games where he would block a shot at the rim and then casually step beyond the arc to drain a three on the very next possession, a sequence that should not exist in the same player, let alone a teenager still a year away from NBA eligibility. The basketball world watched stat lines that belonged to two different positions fused into a single human being. He was not climbing the normal ladder of development, dominating lower levels before slowly proving himself at higher ones. He was skipping rungs entirely, performing against grown professional men in Europe's top league and still looking like the most dangerous player on the floor. Then June 2023 arrived and the entire basketball world stopped to watch the draft lottery and the draft itself unfold because everyone already knew who was going first. The San Antonio Spurs called his name, and what followed in his rookie season was historic in the truest sense. He became the first rookie in NBA history to record at least 200 blocks and 100 made three-pointers in a single season. A combination that simply had no precedent because no player before him had the physical range to even attempt both at that volume. He swept Rookie of the Year honors. He represented France at the Paris Olympics in front of his home crowd, helping push the national team to a silver medal finish. A moment so symbolically loaded, it almost writes itself. The kid who was once overlooked by the very basketball ecosystem around him, standing on an Olympic podium in his own country, with the entire world finally watching exactly what it had nearly missed. When asked about all of it, the praise, the comparisons to legends, the alien label that refuses to go away, Wembanyama does not posture or perform humility for the cameras. He keeps it short. He talks about work that is not finished, about wanting to win, not about being satisfied with where he already stands. That restraint says almost as much about him as the highlight reels do. This is a player who skipped steps the sport assumed were mandatory, who turned a body once seen as a liability into the most feared two-way weapon basketball has seen in a generation, and who is now eyeing championships, MVP conversations, and a return to Olympic gold as the only finish lines that still matter to him. So here is the real question we're sitting with. If a 7'4" kid from a small French town, once overlooked by the very system meant to develop him, can completely rewrite what a basketball player is allowed to look like, how many more once-in-a-generation talents are out there right now, being scrolled past by scouts who simply are not looking in the right place? Drop your answer in the comments because this conversation is far from over.